Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys podcast. As always, I'm your host, Garrett Jagaman. Tonight, I am riding solo. Daniel was not able to join us for this specific interview, but we do have an awesome episode planned for you tonight, so make sure you stick around. As always, we bring you our shows 2 to 3 times per month. 8 to 9 to 9:30, just depends on the show and the topic, but roughly 8 to 9 every episode, Eastern Standard Time, and you can check that out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Spreaker, Castbox, Spotify, you name it, we're on it. So make sure you tune in, click the like, share, and follow button. The more that you do that, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings, more people that discover the show, and the great things that we can continue to do with the show. The other great thing is it allows you to keep track of all new episodes as they drop, and it allows you to look back through our archives, and look at all the other great past episodes. Certainly have something for absolutely everyone, so make sure you check it out. With that being said, if you do want to talk to us live during the show, you can do that through Spreaker.com or through the Spreaker app. That is our hosting company. That is Spreaker. If you go on there is an instant messenger feature. We always encourage our fans to talk to us during the show. Ask our guests when we have them questions. We read off your interview questions, your statements, your comments, and we just like hearing what it is that you guys think of the topics that we discuss and everything in between. So make sure you click that and check us out. We would like to thank our sponsors, Cryptid TV. You can check them guys out on either Facebook or YouTube. Great underground community of supernatural and paranormal, topics and ideas where everyone is welcome. You're not criticized because of your beliefs, no matter how far out they might be. You meet like-minded people that you can talk in a safe environment and talk over the paranormal, cryptids, aliens, metaphysics. No matter what you want to talk about, certainly can do so. And it kind of links very well with our show, as those are the topics we talk about on the show. So make sure you give them some love as always. And we're going to kind of jump into it tonight. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, that I put together for our guest tonight, and then we'll let him kind of tell you in his own words. But tonight's guest is Adam Kimmell. And Adam is not only a paranormal researcher, but also the owner of 2 highly active locations, Madison Seminary and Fairfield County Infirmary. He is also the producer, director, and host of the award-winning YouTube paranormal series Resident Undead. And if that obviously wasn't impressive enough, Adam is the creator and founder of MadCon, which is a paranormal convention that is held annually to raise awareness and funds for something that certainly means a lot to me, which is the fight against cystic fibrosis. So this gentleman has a lot on his plate. He's doing a lot for the community of the paranormal, and certainly someone I find to be very interesting, someone very influential, and someone I want every one of you to find out about if you don't already know him. If you don't, make sure you check out, obviously his series, his fundraiser, his team, and everything in between. If you are already someone who is a fan of Adam's, it might just teach you some things about him that you didn't know. So certainly join us as we welcome Adam to the show. How you doing tonight, brother?
Garrett, thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem.
That was an excellent opener. It made me reflect, like we were talking about, talking about the beginnings and stuff. And here I'm thinking, like 10 years ago, there wasn't anything, right? I hadn't accomplished anything. And 10 years ago, I set out and I found so many incredible people along the way. The paranormal community, as I heard you talking about the people that host you, the cryptid TV and stuff. this community is so large of so many incredible people, and it's that standing army that's made amazing things happen. It's even brought us here tonight. So I'm looking forward to this chat.
No, absolutely. It is. It's wild. I mean, because it's almost an unsung thing. You don't see the paranormal community much on a face value until you start to actually dig into the community, and then you realize how vast and how far its roots have reached, and it's very impressive. And as you said, you start out kind of in the field of just being by yourself, and over time, stars align to put you in contact with the right people at the right times to build, as you have a mini empire.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And it is, when we all start into this research, we usually think we're alone. When I started back in 2010, I only knew a handful of teams. And, as you keep getting out there, it's, I love using the reference like The Walking Dead and finding more survivors, because as you keep progressing in the paranormal field, you start realizing how many people are out there. And every event counts. Every time you film, it just keeps snowballing into something more. So, you were asking kind of about the backstory of how this all started. My story starts back in 2010. I was interested, I had some events happen to me in college that intrigued me, but it wasn't until 2010 when I had an ex-girlfriend dare me to go out to a cemetery by myself. Because I was watching these shows such as Paranormal State, Ghost Adventures, and I kept thinking to myself, this stuff could be fake. They could be faking the shadows. They could be faking the EVPs. And I completely understand every skeptic until it happens to you right in front of your face. You kind of need that, right?
Absolutely.
So I went out to a cemetery as I was dared by her. I was scared. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not even going to pretend like I was brave. It was 3 a.m. All I had was a simple digital voice recorder, Olympus, I believe was the Olympus brand. And I was really quick about it. I only stayed out there about maybe a half hour. I asked like 3 or so questions. The last question I had asked was, if there's anything you'd like to tell me to tell your family, go ahead and I'll tell them. And I didn't review the EVP while I was at the cemetery. I went back. My ex-girlfriend was still up. I handed her the recorder real quick. I was like, hey, I'm going to use the bathroom real quick. I wasn't even 10 minutes or anything like that. I came back. She had listened to everything, and she was under the sheets crying.
Oh, wow.
And, I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, you said to me you were alone. And I was like, I was. That's really alarming that you're saying that. On that last EVP, where I'd asked, if there's anything you want me to tell your family, what would it be? A very clear EVP, Class A, was captured of a man, a graspy voice saying, help me. And it was, you couldn't doubt what you heard. That's what I needed. And this will kind of come full circle to when I see teams come to Madison or Fairfield and they're first timers. They always say to me, they're skeptic. I get it. I completely 100% respect it. Because that's how I started. I didn't come into this haunted or plagued as a child. And some people did have that happen to them. To me, completely nothing. There was nothing that ever made me look at it. Like, I always thought ghost stories were cool. Never once really, thought much farther until it was in my face. This moment, that first EVP, a week would go by, and I literally, I would drop out of college. And I did this. I went to my advisor, and I was more intrigued by this. For 5 years, I studied political science, international security, and terrorism, counterterrorism. I thought I was going to end up, in Washington, D.C. I didn't really want it. No one ever knows what they want to do with their lives. And it was the best decision I ever made. I pulled out of college, and that was around 2008. For the next 2 years, I would study the paranormal, get into filming a little bit, but then officially in 2010, I would form Resident Undead. And it was about telling a story, okay? Because I know that a lot of investors want to get out there and just find and document evidence. But to me, I wanted to document the unique story of you at that place and time, at that location, what happened. Because we know when we investigate, you can investigate on a Friday and I can investigate on a Saturday back to back. the hauntings may be different.
Absolutely.
And that's right. That's completely fine. But I was so intrigued about the individual stories. And that's what I really wanted Resident Undead to revolve around. It wasn't if anyone thought we were right or wrong. It was the story and documenting it in that moment. And it would progress over the next several years. I would go through team members. In this game, I usually see this a lot with teams. There's always that one really determined person on the ground. And the other ones, they're secondary. They like it, but it's more of a hobby to them. And I had to go through that as well. I had to keep getting through the second stringers until I found first stringers that were completely involved in it, loved it. And that's what created the current Resident Undead. I have Rebecca Kirschbaum, and she doesn't like the name psychic because it is misconstrued through our culture, but she does have very incredible abilities. She gives me the eyes in the sky. And I don't think I could ever ghost hunt without her because, without her, we're just asking questions in the dark and then we got to go home and review our EVPs. We don't know exactly what we're aiming at. With her, she can help direct the investigation to where we need it to go and at least get better interaction if we know what they're trying to get at. I have Ashley Lucky. She, the girl with cat ears, if anyone's new to this and just watch. The girl with cat ears, that's Ashley Lucky. I've known her for over 14 years. Slippery Rock University. We both went to college together. And, it was intriguing to me. I always wanted to pull people that were not in the paranormal field into the paranormal field because the paranormal community is amazing as it is. But when you can take someone from the outside in, you kind of can mold them to your certain investigation style. At this point, I can't take someone from the underground and probably merge them into how I shoot with Resident Undead because it's very unorthodox tactics, heavy psychic phenomena. We recreate time, ripples in time, where we use that to stimulate the dead for maximum interaction. And that's very new to someone because you also kind of have to have a little bit of acting skills, or at least be, B-roll, or B, what do they call those, like B or C filming, it's like Impractical Jokers. It's a lot of impromptu stuff. We only practice the first 3 or 4 lines, and then after that, it's all impromptu. Be in the moment, try to be the haunting to stimulate the haunting. So Ashley, because of our chemistry together, we have that 14 years of chemistry. We click very well. So that's great for the investigation. It's very raw and natural. Chris Musgrove, he reached out to me after I had a TV show deal that fell through. The industry is very cutthroat. I had that deal stolen from me, which is completely fine. I would never want to get away from the timeline we're on because this timeline was way better. And it was a learning lesson for me the first time I dipped into the industry outside of the underground. And he met me at the right time. I just got back from Wyoming after a documentary we were filming. It was another paranormal documentary. And for some reason, I answered the call. He just said, "Hey, I'm from Indiana. Really like your show, Resident Undead. I'd really like to investigate with you sometime." And he had only investigated with his brother. So he was, in a sense, uncontaminated from any certain kind of ways of investigating. And it worked perfect from there. The 4 of us merged to create Resident Undead. Along the way, I would have production assistants because when you're filming a show like this, I can only take it so far. My good friends Eric McGill and David Wooliver would join us. They were amazing with production. These guys never went to school for it. We're all self-taught. And I think in the industry, the people that are self-taught are much more aggressive than those who've learned it from a book. Nothing against those who have learned it from a book, but you have to be very quick on your feet when you do it the way we're doing it. All of us would come together to form Resident Undead, which we've done over, I don't know how many episodes at this point, at least 30 plus. But out of the modern RU, I think there's about 17, 18, or 19 episodes.
That's very impressive. Yes. I mean, you guys have put out, definitely a nice catalog of episodes, both with past team members and current team members. And it's great to have. I love the viewpoint that you guys come from because my group does it a little bit different as well. There's a lot of people that are going simply to capture paranormal evidence to say like, ha, it's real. I already know that it's real, and I don't even need to prove to anybody. I know for a fact. I'm the opposite of you. As you said, it came later in life for you. I am one of those childhood, experiencers that had it since a very young age. 7 years old, I actually seen my first full body apparition, and it just kind of sparked it from there. It's been a passion of mine my whole life, so I always knew that it existed. So there's a lot of teams that just want to prove that, and I said, you know what, I don't want to do that. Our team is simply after the fact of showing the history of it and connecting the haunt with it. Not just to say, hey, we prove that there's a ghost or an entity here, but the entity said his full name, which connects back to someone that was here in 1852, who was the caretaker of the house. So we go after the history aspect, which is a little different than a lot of groups. I love what you guys are doing to go after the individual experience, because as you said, you can go there, I can go there, and someone else can go there 3 nights in a row and have completely different interactions, completely different messages. And what is the rhyme or reason? We don't always know. Sometimes the spirits interact with what type of person we are. There's reasons that it, for some reason, resonates with someone and doesn't. I mean, even within our own groups, there's time my group might be in a certain spot of the building, come out and say, there's absolutely no activity over here, Garrett. I go in there and have massive amount of activity happen 10 minutes later. It just depends. So I love how you capture the individual experience of it. And that's what really resonated with me whenever I watched your guys' series and was scanning through the episodes and watching. I'm like, wow, I love the way that these guys put it together.
You said it brilliantly. Like, I love exactly like you're saying, it's that capturing the moment thing and even tapping into the history, exactly what you're saying. That is just so intriguing. I guess this kind of gets, I don't mean for this to be dark, but when we look for motivation, mortality, we're all racing the clock. And this research is such an irony. Here we are chasing ghosts. And sometimes I wonder, are we already the ghosts? Like, what story are we leaving behind ourselves? What's always been eerie, what keeps the momentum for me going? And then everybody has their own certain motivations. 10 years ago, I did not have that mortality motivation. It wasn't until I started, dealing in this kind of research and death heavier that it started to click to me. I was like, one day, someone's going to be talking about our stories. We need to make it count, because what story do we leave behind? There are 2 kinds of individuals in this world. The ones that just kind of drift through and enjoy the pleasures, and that's fine. Their existence was here for the blink of an eye, and they won't be remembered. And there are the others that try really hard to make something count, to change our surroundings, make things better for future generations, or contribute somehow. And it's that kind of motivation that has sparked me for cystic fibrosis, for one. Let's get everyone together. Let's do something big. Even creating the series, it was almost like a beacon. It has connected other people, because once you get yourself out there on a platform, more people chime in. You start trading ideas. Garrett, this is the first time we've been able to talk, and it's great. It's almost like the more we're talking, it's like talking to an old friend. We have a very lot of similar point of views. But yes, this entire journey is so incredible.
It is, man. It opens up a lot of doorways, and you expressed that with your sentiments of how you came to be. You said that there was a deal that presented itself that seemed so lucrative, and then it got kind of snuffed out in front of you that I'm sure was disheartening and heartbreaking, but at the same time, sometimes that's the perfect way of things happening, is you have this tragedy that happens that you're like, oh, wow, we thought this was our moment. It just got stolen from us. And then, for a little while, you kind of sit there in that sorrow, but then all of a sudden you see it clearly and you see another door that opens and say, oh my God, thank you that first one did close, because it wouldn't have led me to where I am now. And I'm perfectly content and happy with where I'm at now. I'm going to build from this platform. I'm going to make it my very own, rather than maybe have a deal that would try to tell you how to make your show. And I mean, that's, as you said, it's a cutthroat industry. And I mean, there's a lot of times people will sign you or get you to a contract, but then it no longer is your vision. It's their vision, and you lose that integrity. Whereas now you've gotten to keep the integrity and put out something that's near and dear to your guys' heart. So I think it all happens, not to be cliche, but a lot of times it does happen for a reason.
We talk about all the time, timelines, and it's very delicate. Like, you're right. You took the words right out of my mouth. I would have never wanted that timeline to happen, even in the moment you think so, because we can't really see the future that far. Hindsight's 2020. that move of it collapsing and being taken away could have been the greatest move ever, and I wouldn't have known that until now, you know. And even with the industry, the best advice I can give to the underground, and I see this all the time with people at Madison, they don't realize when you sign up for ghost hunting, to get to the next level, you kind of have to teach yourself filmmaking, or it's just a hobby in a sense, and that's fine. I see a lot of teams that just want to live in the moment. They're document for themselves. And there are another class of investigators that the minute they pick up that camcorder, well, you've entered a different arena, because how far do you want to take it? You can stay in one bubble and document beepy lights going off and present an EVP from time to time, or you can take it to that next level, teaching yourself video production. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. I get a lot of people that are like, wow, Adam, your work's so good. Trust me, I never went to school for video productions. Yes, I've done it over the last 10 years, but I've learned a lot over that, and I think people can do it even faster. Tech has come so much farther than 2010, but taking it to that next level of documenting the adventure, I think a lot of paranormal teams will enjoy that. And a lot of teams do want TV shows, and I'll break it down. I understand why. Wouldn't it be great to be paid to do what you love, right? We all say this. It would be great to have a production company follow you around, and for the rest of your life, or for a very solid amount of years, you can ghost hunt. You can be paid to do that. You can get the notoriety, whatever you are. But you know, the one thing I do tell a lot of people is stay humble with it. Be sure, or be the good out there. There's a lot of people that are in it for the wrong reasons. But I will say this: it's yin and yang. For all the bad that I've seen a lot of good. And even leaning back to MadCon 3, you know, so many good people came together for cystic fibrosis, and 80 to 90% of the people that you see in any of those videos are a part of the paranormal community. A lot of close friends of mine. There are a lot of good people out there, and I think we're approaching exciting times for the paranormal. We always think that there's lulls, the paranormal's dropping off and things, and I will admit, in a post-pandemic stage of where we are in the nation, yes, TV shows are flopping and stuff. It's hard to travel. But I do believe that a boom is coming, and we're going to see a lot of new things on the paranormal front. Just super exciting times there.
Well, a lot of times you have to wipe the slate clean to start a new one, and it's sad. I mean, it's never going to not hurt people in the process. I mean, what's going on around the country right now with the pandemic has closed a lot of doors for a lot of businesses and industries, a lot of shows, a lot of restaurants, just you name it. And that's very unfortunate, but it's an ever-changing thing. Life has to change in order for it to continue. So there is always that closing of doors, as we already mentioned, and opening of others. So as you said, there are shows, you know, that are closing down. There's teams calling it quits. There's these things happening, but they have to become the soil that the roots of new change burrow into. That's what has to happen for change to happen. So, I mean, it's sad, but it's a necessity. So, I mean, I think you're correct. I think there's a lot of big things on the way. And one of the things that you mentioned already that I certainly want to touch on tonight is MadCon. I mean, obviously, this was just this past week. I was pretty upset. I did have a prior engagement, so whenever I got you on the show and seen your announcements of it, I really wanted to come to that. And I had already had something kind of booked that weekend, and my wife says you can duck out on the plans, but I already promised her I would go somewhere, to a family event. And I was like, I won't, but I'm definitely planning on being there next year. Maybe my group will come out together and celebrate that with you guys. But that's something that's always been near and dear to my heart. Is a musician for quite a many years. I've thrown a lot of events, a lot of charity fundraisers, a lot of benefits to help kids with cancer and to help different causes. And it's really funny. It resonated with me specifically for two reasons. One, it is my nephew. His journey has been a little bit hard since he was born. He was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis within the first couple weeks of his life. So it's something that definitely resonates with my family. He has a hard battle. Just recently, his numbers, he constantly has to get tests and things done. His numbers were very, very high, I mean, to a very alarming rate. And luckily, we've been able to kind of get that back down, and he's doing a lot better right now, but it's constantly the unknown. I mean, you just never know what 1 week to the next is going to bring, and it is a very hard life for anybody with cystic fibrosis. So that resonated with me right off the bat, but what really makes it a funny thing is that for the last year, I've been telling people, I just retired from the music industry. I've been in that for about 18, 19 years. It's been very, very prosperous for me. Got to do everything I ever set out to do pretty much. And a lot of people know me for different communities. The paranormal knows me for one side, the music industry. They don't always connect the dots of who the same person is together. But before I quit or retired, whatever you want to call it, I had said for a while that I was going to start an annual fundraiser for cystic fibrosis. Yeah, no, it's very ironic. So I've been talking about that for the last year or so, because we've done them in the past for cancer, for children with cancer. And there's another group called Rock for Life that does a lot of really big shows for children with cancer here in Pennsylvania. They throw several events a year. And I've always been kind of, participating in those events, playing them, helping out, giving up time on that end. And I said, you know what, I don't want to really steal anything from them. We've done specific benefits. I says, but we're going to start something new. And I was like, you know what, a near and dear cause to me because of my nephew is cystic fibrosis. So I'd been talking about it, but there's been a lot of changes the last 2 years, and I decided to step away from, music. And I thought, you know what, that doesn't mean I can't still throw this fundraiser, but I'm going to give it a little time, let the water settle, and then we'll see if I want to do that as just a promoter, because I've done a lot of shows and things. But it just hasn't come to fruition yet. We're still in kind of the interim of that. And then I came across you. I already knew about the series. I didn't know about you so much as an individual or a person. But then I started, like I said, looking at your page, looking at a lot of the other things that you're involved with, and then approaching you for the show. And I came across MadCon, and I hadn't known about it. But when I clicked on it and started reading about it, looking at the years past and things of that nature, I'm like, well, holy hell. I'm like, this dude is a paranormal investigator like me. Like you said, a lot of things that connected. And I'm like, and he's throwing a benefit for cystic fibrosis. How incredibly ironic and odd. So kudos to you, man. I mean, that's beautiful that you're doing that. I really resonate with that and appreciate that as someone whose family is affected.
Right. And it's, I was unaware of cystic fibrosis about 7 years ago. And it's still something that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's what we're trying to bring attention to. And it's no one's fault. It's just there's a lot of diseases out there. You know what I mean? To be on the forefront of all of them, I totally get it. It is very hard to keep up with everything. But 7 years ago, when I was introduced to Chris Musgrove, I met his son Easton for the first time. And I just completely was taken back by it, because everything was completely normal to them. He had the vest on that it kind of is a pulsating vest because the mucus in the lungs are not moving correctly. Yeah. And so you're the shaker vest, the shaker vest. So he had that on, and they were going about life like it was normal. And to me, I'm like, what is happening? I don't understand. And then finally I asked the question, and Chris was like, oh, sorry, I should have said something. For any parents that have cystic fibrosis, it's just another day. You know what I mean? And he gave me all the information. Him and Chris just sat there, told me all about it. And I've always had a soft spot for children. And I don't think any child should be, have to grow. Like, I had such a good life. I had such a good childhood. And I feel that every other child deserves that. And there should be no illnesses. There shouldn't be no unhappiness. And I had said to Chris, whatever I can do in the future to help, I will. And it took me a few years. I couldn't do it in the first two. I didn't have anything. And, when I did get Madison Seminary, it was game on. I knew right away, when we get this place open, we're going to do these cons, we're going to raise money. And in the last 3 years, so let me count this again, because I know in the last 2 years, we raised, I think it was $6,500. And just this year alone, these things snowball slowly. I'm thinking, okay, we'll break the 10,000 threshold, over the next, 3, we'll get to that 10, right? And we blew it away. I brought in some of my good friends from Tennessee, Gateway Paranormal, good old boys, and they started helping with an online donation that was happening months prior, and I didn't realize they helped get that thing up to $5,000. It's the same account we go into, right? So we presented 2 checks at MadCon. We presented the first check of how much money we made through selling shirts, vendors, all the things we provide, the raffles. We had so many paranormal locations chime in. It was ridiculous. Not one of them denied us. They were so willing to help. So we had, I've lost count, like 30 to 40 different locations. It took, let me just say the raffle I had to go through a solid hour to raffle everything off. It was so many. But all of that, I think that alone raised $3,500 just in location raffles. When the smoke was done, I think it was something over $5,000. And then we brought out another check that contributed to the online stuff that many of those same people contributed before, which got us up to the $10,216 range. And like you said before, in the last 2 years, there have been massive strides for cystic fibrosis research. And I can say directly, as you probably can as well, that I've seen an improvement in Easton, with the different medications. It is a world of difference from even just 3 years ago. He doesn't cough as much. He has more energy. There's new medicines he's taking. And that's what makes me feel so good. When we do this, that money is going towards the cure. It's the greatest.
No, it really is. I mean, it's jumped. I mean, obviously a lot of times in medical advances, it doesn't happen as quickly as we would like to see it, but it happens as quickly as it can. And, if you rewind back 15, 20 years ago to someone with cystic fibrosis, it was an absolute death sentence. I mean, there was no doubt about it. I mean, you weren't really making it past, 30, 40 years old, unfortunately. Right. Now, you fast forward 20-some years later, and that's not the case. You have people living a good bit past that. Now, it's still they're not, in the clear necessarily, but they have advanced medicine. They've advanced techniques and research that have allowed for longer treks of life and happier life, more comfortable life. And, if you fast forward 20 years from now, hopefully they have the cure. Hopefully they've figured out a way to just abolish it from the face of the earth, like a lot of other diseases that have come and gone in the past. And that's what yourself, what a lot of people that are pushing for this want to see happen, is a day that this isn't even a thing anymore. Is, we can give you this and it's gone, or we can give you this treatment and maybe you still have it, but you can live a completely long, beautiful, comfortable life. And I mean, we're in it. It's just not fully there yet, but you know what? Things don't get there unless you have soldiers on the front line pushing for it. And you certainly, sir, are one of them. So thank you.
Perfect. Said perfectly. There's a lot of soldiers on the ground. And for anyone that's listening to us right now that you yourself are diagnosed with CF or have family members, trust me, there's a lot of good people out there fighting. Garrett, myself, countless individuals that come out to Madison. We've got soldiers. So there will be some big improvements in the next 5 years, guaranteed. So.
Well, and talking about that, I think that I just seen some announcements from you that there was such a high demand at MadCon 3 that people obviously are already excited for next year. That's a good thing about a great event, is that when you go to a great event, you have such a good time that you already start planning for the next year, as soon as that one ends, which is it's a gift and a curse, because you're happy that they're so excited for your event next year, but then you're like, hey man, don't put too much pressure on me. I'm still relaxing and regaining some strength from this past one. But I seen that next year, not only are we looking for probably even a bigger and badder, MadCon 4, but I did hear that you were looking to also throw, a separate event from that as well. Do you care to speak about that?
Yeah, so we have Madison Seminary, is what we're talking about, and then I have the Fairfield County Infirmary that I just recently bought this last February, and it's located out here in Lancaster, Ohio, about 40 minutes south of Columbus, and it's an amazing place. It's got a very rich history. When Destination Fear was filming at Madison Seminary, one of the producers had come to me and said, we're in a bind. We're short one location. Something fell through. And I said, you know what? There's a place out in Lancaster. It's an untouched gem. This was before I purchased it. Okay. But I've always loved it. Always loved it. Then Destination Fear filmed there. They caught a lot of great evidence. And Dakota was like, wow, that was really good. They got the jail cell door opening. So for anyone listening now, it's Destination Fear, Fairfield County Infirmary. So yes, we run it just like Madison. This is a strict paranormal playground. 100% of the money that comes in is literally from the paranormal community. You can call it a pay to play, but this is why I started saving these locations, was because I would go to a location to film like everybody else, and I would have this love for doing it. It was like Christmas. Every 2 months you get to go film. But it was also a shame when I would come back to the same location. It was deteriorating. And I would think to myself, wait a second, why are we giving you money? It can't be that hard. There's teams here all the time. I see people posting about these locations. Why is the money not going where it should go? And that was one of the things when I saved Madison Seminary with the crew and saved Fairfield. I mean, Fairfield should be guaranteed. If you've seen what we've done at Madison, you know Fairfield's in good hands. But it's putting the money back where it is. And the paranormal community has financed it. Because of them, this will stand for another century. These buildings are going to be in amazing condition, Fairfield coming up. But you did ask about this next event. So we have our annual MadCons for cystic fibrosis. And I did say when we get new locations, we were going to kind of look for new causes. Because Madison already has cystic fibrosis under wraps. Like, I mean, we're making buku bucks for research there. And we were thinking about finding something else for FCICon, something else to raise money for. And we're still got some stuff in the works, but it will be another paranormal convention. And I believe we're getting some dates worked out. I don't have them right now to say, but we do have some dates coming up where next year MadCon 4 will be taking place and FCICon 1. Individually, you know, MadCon will be for cystic fibrosis and FCICon will be something else. And we're hoping to really put another boom on something that the country, you know, is hurting on, something that is very monumental to a lot of people.
No, that's beautiful, man. I am certainly a supporter of it, and I hope that, you know, since there's more spotlight on what it is that you're doing, and now I'm kind of you know, focused on that and seeing that, I definitely would love to come out and help in any way that I can. My team would love to come out and help. We're always looking to do what we can for the paranormal community. I mean, we just love being a part of that, or helping, even like you said, locations, even graveyards. I'm that weirdo that stops at an old abandoned graveyard that no one takes care of anymore and mows the grass and picks up the tree branches and things. And then people are looking at me like I'm the caretaker, and I'm like, I'm just some random weirdo that's cleaning the graveyard because I feel bad that someone's not taking care of this. So I think that's awesome that you're doing that with these buildings, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. But these historic locations are essential to what we do as paranormal investigators and someone who loves pieces of history, because let's face it, once a lot of these type of buildings are gone, they're never going to be here again. I mean, we just finished our investigation of Trans-Allegheny 2 weeks ago. The building is phenomenal. I mean, by far, I think my favorite building I've ever been in, and I've been in quite a few. Once that building eventually goes, there'll never be another building like Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum ever again.
That's right.
And it's you know, someone has to preserve it. And like you said, so often as paranormal teams or a researcher, you pay to go to a place because you respect it. You want to research there and connect with the spirits. But then you look at it 2 years later and you're like, I know 100 other teams have come here. And I went back a second time and you're like, well, nothing's been fixed.
Nothing's been fixed.
What's going on here? And you're like, well, someone's making all this money.
Someone's pocketing. Yeah.
Someone's pocketing it. Yeah.
I know a lot of locations, and I'm not going to speak out. We're not going to war or anything, but I know a lot of locations that are doing that. And it's Madison Seminary was designed not only to weaponize the paranormal community, which we have. We have weaponized the paranormal community to show how dangerous and how effective when it comes to even handling political entities. When I first got to Madison, I ran through some political red tape, so I rallied up the underground, and that squashed that really quick. 4 years ago, we bombarded Madison and we took care of business. You know, there was a lot of unfair things happening. And just recently, and like I said, that's been fixed at Madison. Everything is beautiful out there now. Just recently, I had a commissioner attack me out here saying that the property was an eyesore, which was, you know, outlandish. I mean, we've had so many teams already out here taking beautiful pictures. And I don't think that commissioner realized the minefield he went into, because when I posted that article, I mean, my gosh, did everyone just mollywop and jump on board? And it's not the trouble you want. You have a very passionate demographic of individuals. And even at times, anyone who's listening, if you feel alone, I assure you are a part of a very, very large collective, very, very large, that spans across the country. And like I said, it's been weaponized. It's literally, we know what is right. We know we're saving history, and we're going to get it one way or another. So yeah, it is an incredible thing all around, man.
No, it is. It's beautiful that you're doing that. And I mean, you're always going to have, you know, political figures that whenever you're in purchasing land and purchasing historic places that are going to, you know, give you a hard time, that you're going to have to combat against.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You guys will win that one like you did with Madison. And I mean, it's it's one of the steps you have to go through, unfortunately.
Right.
But I look forward to seeing what else obviously comes down the road for you, because I mean, them are two great locations that you have there. I would love to own a location like that. And actually, I've been approached about being a partner before on that. I've thought about it. And then the second thing I think is, my wife would probably kill me, because I would be there so often, man. I don't know how you do it. I would be spending nights there by myself. I'm a weirdo. I like doing a lot of solo investigating. I do a lot of locations 100% solo.
It's, people have asked me, it is tough. People ask me, I'm working on Fairfield all the time. And with the first 2 years of Madison, I was out there all the time. But it's funny, it is a lot of work when you're saving the locations that you don't get to investigate as much as you want. Like, oh God, I wish. I've owned it since February, and I've investigated it maybe 5 times.
Okay.
Like full blown, really sitting down. Now, when we're working on the building and something happens, I guess you can count that because it might catch your attention for a little bit. But I've had a lot of people approach me, and it is doable. You yourself can save them. It's not as hard as one would think. It's sometimes requires no startup, sometimes requires a lot of startup. But it's just more of the time you want to put into it.
Yeah, it's a major undertaking to be.
Major undertaking.
I mean, if you luck out and get a building that's still foundationally very solid and it's just old, then hey, you're probably lucked out and jump on it if you can. But let's face it, I mean, if they're a 150-year-old building, it's going to need some work done to it. So I mean, yeah, you might be able to work out, like you said, with startup or without startup. You might be able to jump on it and get something, but you got to expect it. It's going to now become a life project that you're going to pour quite a large amount of time into to get it back to a standpoint, not only that you're not going to have problems with commissioners and things like that, but that you're able to let others, outside of yourself or friends come to investigate it safely without any, BS of anybody causing problems.
And that takes a lot of work. I think as the underground, we need to reflect, because I didn't know until I was in this game now of locations that we are very lucky to investigate these locations, because they can be shut down rather easily if they don't meet code.
Yeah.
That is just because it's an old haunted building. If you're bringing the public in, you have to maintain it safely. And that was one of my biggest battles. Madison taught me a lot, from coding, making sure you're up to code, fire code, building code, all these things. Again, not intimidating. Once you learn it and you're thrown into the arena, it's not intimidating. You just know what you have to do. It took me 2 years to get Madison up and running. And again, that was knowing nothing. That was like, oh, hey, we're going to buy this property. And then I got slammed into a wall right away. It took me 2 years because I had to figure it out. I had no one to help me, no mentors. I just started assembling the army, my inner circle. I was like, we'll do this. I don't know how yet. Although with what we learned in Madison, we brought Fairfield County Infirmary from February of purchasing. It was not up to code as far as it was, fire code wasn't met, building wasn't met. I think it was February, March, April, May. By May, the building was fully operational.
That's awesome.
You could have the public in, but it's what you learn along the way. And we've dropped about $100,000 into Madison Seminary, which I'm proud to say that's showing the community their money is going where you put it in.
Yeah.
So through all of that, these teams that come, that's when they go to Madison. When you see it, I love the teams that were there before I bought it, right? And then they come back and they're like, oh my God, this place, it was filled with trash. Garrett, not going to lie. It was a trash pit, dude. Madison was used as a storage trash pit. And it took me 2 years to take all the trash out and to only expose these beautiful rooms that people have come to know and investigating. It's insane. But yeah, and like I said, anyone listening, there are ways to save more, and there are many more locations to save. It is possible.
Well, absolutely. It's something definitely on my to-do down the road. I don't know if it's the right timing right now, but something I've thought about is I'm heavily involved in this. Obviously, I have 2 paranormal radio shows, a paranormal team, and some talks about doing my own. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but I'm looking at doing my own individual filming for just me, because as I said, I do a lot of solo investigations, and people think I'm insane because not only do I go to famous locations, such as the ones that we're talking about, but I mean, even old hidden landmarks in the woods or graveyards that are forgotten. As I said, I'll go out and set up a tent and stay there all night by myself. I love it. And teams are great. I love working with the team because it gives you more movability of being able to cover more and do things. But not, to me personally, nothing will ever beat going out 100% alone, because the fear is real. When something happens, it is just you. There's no one to look at and say, holy shit, did you hear that? Or, hey, like, can you collaborate, or, say, did you hear the same thing I did? No, it's you. And it's you fully, rawly taking that in. And I love that. And I have some things in the works. I just don't know how to pull the trigger on it exactly. Like you said, I got to figure that out like you did, because I've never been into film. Audio, radio, music, managing, booking, marketing, promotion, all of that. I got that on a lockdown. But the filming's just never been a strong suit of mine. But something I'll figure out eventually.
It would be interesting. I've had some friends that try to do the solo filming, and it is tough. It is tough because the mobility, like you're talking about, when you have a team, you've got mobile cameras running with you, and you're right, you can also double check anything you guys hear. But from a production standpoint, it's very difficult to be by yourself. And, like, do you put a rig on? Do you have stat cams? What if you hear something and you want to pursue it? You got to move all that stuff. It has been the holy grail of filming to try and figure that out. I have a friend, Eric McGill, extremely talented, has his own show called Our Haunted Minds, and he was also the one I was talking about who was helping with production of Resident Undead. He was trying to create these rigs so him and Dave could just do it, and even two individuals is tough, because you need to have like a POV on you, got to have a mobile cam, so you have all those views, because if you're putting on a show for people to watch, they need to be in the moment everywhere, and man, is it a pain. But I do think you can pull it off. I mean, it is doable. It's just going to take a lot of thinking.
It is, and I wanted to keep it very raw, though. So my thought was, and I hate to let the cat out of the bag. I wasn't planning on it, but my thinking would be along the lines of think Survivor, man. I mean, it is truly just you.
Yeah, that would be the way.
Yep, and you set up the camera, and you were there, and it pans the room that you were in. You have something attached to you, so it picks up the audio for the camera, and you have static cams throughout the building that'll pick up. But I mean, it is literally you stopping the scene, moving it to the next room, doing it, and you would have to do it in fragments like that. But it would be man versus paranormal.
It would be epic.
It would be epic. Yeah, and I was the name I had coined for it was solitary alignment. And it's something I've been brainstorming for a while. I just haven't pulled the trigger on a lot of projects I got going on, but I just always thought that would be fun, because it brings an element that people haven't seen really. As you know, there's duos, there's trios, there's teams. But how often do you see a man go to somewhere like Trans-Allegheny and say, I am 100% here by myself tonight in this 900-room megalith of a building, and I want to go crazy places. I mean, I'll go places that others won't tread. I mean, Conjuring House is one of the ones that our team's doing next year that a lot of other teams are like, you're out of your mind. One of the other things I want to do is real crazy stuff like the Suicide Forest in Japan. I would love to do stuff like that where people won't even go near it, and I'm like, I will spend a week there alone.
Right.
I'm insane like that. I live for it, but that's always been something kind of on my mind. So it's definitely that, and maybe a building eventually down the road. I've had people approach me, like I said, for a few nice buildings that are up in the market that we've thought about, but it just hasn't happened. So we'll see what time brings. But no, I mean, I love the fact that you're doing that. You're preserving the history. You are bringing the paranormal community together. You're bringing out great content for them. I mean, you are doing it in all the right fashions, which is awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because back in 2010, even 2012 and 2013, I saw a very fragmented paranormal community. And maybe this is coming from my politics that I was learning back in college. Everybody says there's no unity in the paranormal, but that's human nature. Humans are not unified. And what it takes is a lot of leadership to bring people together, to understand that we all are on the same side on any aspect of life, not just the paranormal. And you are right. Madison Seminary was a beginning experiment to show that, hey, everybody drop your shields. This is Rome. This is the new Rome. Come here. Everyone's a friend. You can say anything. No one will judge you. We have amazing conversations. We have an amazing crew. And that's what I think the paranormal needed. There was a lot of standoffishness. And even just what we saw, the unity just this last weekend is incredible. I think this brings a lot of potential, because a lot of people left MadCon, like our Gateway Boys and Steve Brote, who does Saratoga County Homestead, all these individuals came back just refreshed, almost like getting this second wind for the paranormal, because I know it can get into a lull where you feel like you're just down about it. Everybody left pumped to go film new documentaries or researching new ideas. And that's what it is. You bring all of these people together. And that's what's funny. When we describe MadCon, dude, it's like a family reunion. When we even ghost hunt, it's just a lot of fun just to get together, experiment together. But it's one large family union, and I really would love to have you out next year with your entire team, because it's just the more people we keep merging, it's incredible what we can do together.
No, I agree. It's finding common ground for uncommon people.
Exactly.
And that's what it is. And then you get them to let their guard down. And the best thing is, and you nailed it on the head, is your passion and your vision helps sparks, and those sparks land where they will, and they start fires of their own. So you have those people, and it's just like the music industry. I mean, I've been, like I said, involved for that for a very long time, 17 plus years, played hundreds of shows, and it had some really great moments. And you'd play some shows that they were good shows, but they were just shows. They didn't stick out to you. And then you'd play others that, for some reason, everything lined up perfectly, and everyone in the building seemed like they were family, whether they knew each other or not. And the artists all clicked, and everybody performed well that night. It would be one of those shows that you left the building just wowed, and you're like, wow, that's... You know, everything was perfect tonight. I'm going to remember this show for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And it inspires you to say, wow, it just inspired me to write a new song, or it inspired me to do this or that, because the chemistry was perfect. And it doesn't happen often, but when you can have that happen, it is a waterfall effect. I mean, it sparks a lot of other things. It trickles down, and it affects people in ways you don't even realize. That one event last week for you has influenced a lot of people in their ways, but then it trickles to others, You don't even get to see, as the founder of it, what kind of resonance it has, but it still happens nonetheless.
And for something to take away for people listening tonight is why I want everyone to win. I think, again, it comes back to mortality. You know, we only have a short amount of time here. And I would love to see everyone win, because this is our chapter in time. You know, there is so much pie to go around. There are so many stories to tell that when they look at our chapter in time, 2010, 2025, and it's 100 years from now, and people are ghost hunting still, and they will be researching this, they're going to look back and be like, wow, look at these pioneers, man. Look at this entire underground they have within. Our footage will still be there for them to watch. We could really inspire a future generation. So pick up a camera, get out there, get dirty, get the footage, put out the story, because 100 years from now, this will be what they're watching. So everything counts. That's why I was thrilled with everyone being motivated. Like, get out there, let's do this. You know, we're very limited time, everyone. Very, very limited.
No, that's it, because even as I said earlier, with buildings that we're investigating now or things that we're doing now, they might not be here for the next generation. They're still going to have buildings that are amazing, that have activity. The activity's everywhere. It's never going to go away, but they might look back on Madison. They might look back on a Trans-Allegheny or a Hillview Manor or any of these places, Bel Air Demon House, anything. And they might not be standing anymore and say, wow, look at these pioneers, as you said, but look at these buildings they're in. And it's going to influence a young kid who maybe has experienced sightings of ghosts and felt like he's an outcast because he's seeing things that no one else is seeing. And then he pops in this 60-year-old video that he finds and says, oh, wow, you just never know how it's going to affect anybody. And that's what's beautiful about it, is we change lives sometimes at face value and see it, and oftentimes in ways that we don't see, but it happens nonetheless. And that's what's beautiful about it.
You're exactly right, dude. That is straight on. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Now, I got to ask you, a lot of times people would say, what's your favorite paranormal moment, in history? But I don't want to ask that. What I want to ask is, what is your favorite paranormal moment that you've experienced off camera? Because everybody always wants to say, what's your favorort moment that you've captured on the show? No, what is the one moment? Because for me, I've caught a lot of cool stuff on camera, on audio. That's fine. I a lot of times don't even turn on equipment when I go into a certain building, especially a lot of times on my solos. I leave it off. I just go for strictly just the experience myself. But, that's where I seem to have the most amazing activity. For yourself, over the years, what is the most, mind-blowing moment that you had that is something you didn't capture, that is only personal to you, that no one else would be able to really talk about?
Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. Very infamous location. Many of you have been there, and if not, it's quite the destination to visit. There is a third floor psychiatric floor, and many people that have gone there have even said this place, it's just that floor is really messed up. And it's like a once in a million year opportunity to see a full-blown apparition that is interacting with you. And it was on that floor. Myself and two others were there, but of course we had no cameras. But this moment will stick with me because we always think we've seen everything. I assure you we haven't. We were walking back to get another person that was down the hallway. We put all of our cameras on her, and that's why there were no cameras, right? I didn't have a lot of money at the time. That's how it always happens, yeah. Everything was aimed at her. And what was crazy was we get up to that floor, and we hear her going, okay, you guys playing with me, just come in. I'm like, why is she saying that? And as we start looking down the hallway, we're like, what the hell is that? And there is this full-blown shadow figure shimmering. It's got like a sparkle to it, but very dark still. And it's leaning like a human. It's got a human form to it, leaning into the room. And every time it would lean, it did this twice, she would react to it. I'm like, oh my God, she thinks that's our head. And this is real. Like, I'm getting chills telling this story because it sounds so unbelievable. And we slowly are creeping down the hallway. We're probably 40 feet away to 30 feet away. And finally it does that second head bob into the room. And she's like, okay, guys, I'm done playing. Just come. Well, the reason she's saying this is because we had her duct taped to a chair. Okay. So everybody understands she really couldn't leave. So she thought we were playing with her. And finally, after that second bob, it just stares. It's standing straight in the hallway at us. And I remember leaning to them. I said, no one's ever going to believe this. And they're like, yeah, no one ever will. And we're like, it's just standing there. It's literally no fear. It's not like a normal shadow person. This thing it showed no fear. It's just standing there, almost like a standoff thing. We're 30 feet. Now we're getting to 25 feet. And it's literally just perfectly standing in the hallway. And finally, we're itching closer. We get to the 20-foot. We're making this thing out. I remember it shimmering, and I remember the fear in my spine. It split off into two figures, and its feet didn't move. Like, you could see the top of its body kind of moving around a little bit, but the feet, the two legs, stayed completely still and just slid across the floor. Both figures did the same thing, and it went to the right. And to this day, it's almost like when you have something that traumatic happen, your brain's like, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. That wasn't real.
It's a human mechanism, yeah, that it tries to tell you that, like, did I dream that, or did I make that up? I made that up. Yeah, and you didn't. Like, a part of you says, no, I know it happened, but then there's another part that says, did it really?
Yep. Did it really, though? And even though you have multiple witnesses to it, trust me, even it's alarming to me at the same time how my brain is trying to rewire the memory. Like, nah, it was more of a lighting thing, but I know in that moment what I saw, there was something we haven't seen before, haven't encountered, and it was very aggressive and not afraid of us, because we always wonder why shadow figures do the whole bob and hide around rooms. Well, whatever this was, it doesn't care. It doesn't care what you are. It will stand off. So it's interesting.
Yeah, no, shadow people are, man. They're unique. I've gathered quite a bit of research on shadow people over the years and started to put together kind of a catalog of things that eventually someday down the road I would like to put out a book on shadow beings that I started working on a little bit back. And I don't want to rush it because, I think that to put out correct amount of data and analysis that you need years of data and analysis.
Absolutely.
But I've had some wild encounters with shadow people. It seems like that I'm a favorite of theirs rather than the other way around. I go a lot of places and have a lot of shadow beings that seem to interact with me. Hillview Manor is one of the places that they have the creeper on the second floor. That's an infamous being there. That he interacts with me every time I go. He loves me for some reason. I don't know why.
Manor, yeah.
I love that place.
Oh, it is. It was actually back. I grew up in Grove City, Pennsylvania, and that's only a stone throw away from Newcastle, Pennsylvania. And it was actually the first place I seriously investigated back in 2010.
Okay.
Or maybe it was 2009. I can't remember. It was a while back. And Hillview Manor, man, that place, you're right. It's very special, very unique. And yeah, there's a lot of shadow play out there.
There is. It's a very, I just forget the name of the author. They had a famous author of a couple books, and he had a TV show with Robert Englund. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head right now, but he was there recently at a paranormal convention that got canceled, but he still came out for the night to do the ghost hunt. And I went out for a public one. I don't do a lot of public hunts just because it's so hard to really get anything when you have 50 people that are just random people in the building. But I'll go sometimes when they're cheap. I'm like, oh shit, I'll go for the night and have some fun. But he said it himself. He says, I've been everywhere across the United States. I've been to several locations in England. And he says, Hillview Manor is a rare gem. He says it's one of the most active locations I've ever been to in the planet. And I'll definitely stand behind that because I've been to dozens and dozens of locations, and I always usually have a pretty good experience of some sort or another, whether it's something huge that people would be like, oh my God, or it's just something to me. That place, every time I've ever been to, probably 7 or 8 times now, every single time I've been there, I've got wow activity where I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. The most recent, I have an EVP I haven't released yet, but like you said, grade A EVP, crystal clear, no mistaking it. I'm playing the organ, and this will be the first anybody's hearing about it, but I'm playing the organ, and I had it play the organ for me last time I was there about 15 times, which was just phenomenal. And I start playing the organ. Now, it's not plugged in. I'm just tapping the keys, and I tap them, and I say, can you do that? Can you do that for me? And you hear it crystal clear come across and say, get out. And I mean, it's a perfect crystal. It's the best EVP I've ever caught, ever. And in 15 years of doing this, I'm like, all right, buddy. But I mean, it's just every time I'm there, I get crystal clear EVPs, but never to that level. I mean, that sounded like a grown man saying, get out.
Yep. It's very special.
Love it. It's a special gem, and you don't always get that. I mean, you always have something, but not, there's not places that are always just hot spots for that. So that brings me to my next question. If you had to pick one spot that you haven't been to, that is just a bucket list item for you, one of those hotbeds that you just have always wanted to hit and it just hasn't come to fruition yet, where would you pick?
That's a tough one. Because I'm not one of those people that normally needs to find something necessarily new. I was just talking to a team about this. Like, we all tell our own stories, right? So my brain, you can go to a place that's been investigated hundreds of times, but in that unique moment, it's yours.
True.
But since you raised this very intriguing question, if my brain had to think about it, it would be tough to gain access, but Auschwitz.
Okay. No, that'd be awesome. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine the amount of activity there, because I mean, we talked about this on our last episode. My partner Daniel and I, who usually do this specific show together, he's on the alienistic side and cryptid side, major metaphysical guy, and he deals with those side of things with cryptids and aliens, and I deal with the paranormal side. So we kind of come together on a lot of topics. We had talked about the fact of sorrow and misery, how it brings together a different type of energy, and a lot of times where there has been tragedy, it supercharges the soil for activity. And a place like Auschwitz would be just, I mean, off the charts with the amount of death there. There hasn't been many places in the world that have seen that mass amount of people lose their life. Especially in the horrendous ways that they had.
Right.
So I can only imagine the amount of, I mean, Gettysburg is one of the most, active places in the world.
Too.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to think Gettysburg, even though so many people died, didn't die in the form of torture and gas chambers and experiments like they did there. So, I mean, I would have to think that would be an amazing choice as far as just, I think you would feel it. I mean, as people feel different levels, and as you mentioned, you try to talk yourself out of it. That's the main thing that makes, from someone who's never experienced things to someone who has, is we have that mechanical mechanism in our brain that we all have experienced paranormal. Every single person on this planet who's an adult has experienced something paranormal but might not know it, because as soon as it happens and we see it, that triggers in and says, nope, that was just something falling off the counter. That was just this. That was just that. And you don't think more about it. Then as you start to, some people have it a little bit, the mechanism doesn't trigger as quickly or strongly, so they do see it a little bit more, or they have over time trained it to not trigger as easily. And the lesser that you kind of disfigure that thing, the more and more you experience. So you see that thing fall off the counter, and you know what, maybe you don't just shrug it off as being nothing. Then you listen for a minute, and then you hear footsteps on the stairway, and then all of a sudden you listen closer and you hear the door creak upstairs, and you say, wait a second, what's going on here? And then once that happens, now you have slowed down that mechanism a little bit by little bit by little bit until you become someone who's experienced so much like yourself and myself that you just know it's there. I mean, you start to feel it more. Now, I'm a bit of an empath. I wouldn't call myself a full-blown empath, but I do certainly get massive amounts of feelings when I go into buildings. I can usually walk past a room and say, this is the room where we need to be right now. And I think that's over time of just training your brain, because I'm always a skeptic. And then, like you said, you have to be in a way where if something happens, I'm not going to automatically say it's paranormal. I will do everything in my power to prove that it is not real before I can prove that it is. But I'm not a fool to think that there's nothing that's That's
what
not,
you just what you just said was beautiful. It actually, it was funny you mentioned that again, because I wanted to touch on that from earlier, that we no longer need the proof. We know there is so much overwhelming proof out there that there's something speaking back to us, undeniably, right?
Absolutely.
But going into each investigation as a skeptic, it was worded beautifully, because every little creak we hear, every little crack, we're not leaning towards that being a ghost. You know what I mean? There's a difference between that.
There's a fine line between paranoia and paranormal.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we have to tread between paranoia and paranormal, because we can't think that every sound and every flash of light's a ghost. But we also can't think that everything's not and that we're just paranoid and thinking it is. You have to trek that line in between there, and in there is where you find the gold. That so many times there's been things we've captured that on film are amazing. And I've talked about this on other shows before, where there's things that I could put out there and the public would say, that is amazing, where it looks like apparitions. And I say, you know what? We've reenacted it 30, 40, 50 times until we hit the light just right and it recreated the exact thing. And I said, you know what? It was the light off of our, flashlight hitting off of a reflective pot in the room that hit off a mirror in the other room that put what looks like a ghost in the middle of the frame. And you know what? We do that and do that and do that until there's no shadow of a doubt. We do it 100 times, and no matter how many times we try, we can't reenact it. We say, you know what? We got gold right now, guys. And that's what you have to do, because you don't want to present something that's unjust and fake the funk, but you also don't want to overlook something that's a gem and think that it's fake. So like I said, you have to walk that line between paranoia and paranormal. So
100.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said it perfectly.
Well, perfect, man. Well, I think we covered quite a bit on the show tonight. I think we got to find out who you are as a person, obviously how you came to be, your group, your series, the foundations and fundraisers that you've certainly put into place, the buildings that you own. I mean, I feel very good about getting to find out about you. I mean, I know from what I had read and seen, but I always love to put a personality with the accomplishments, and you certainly back it up on both sides. So that's great. I really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing with us, giving up a little bit of your time to let the community know who you are. Folks, if you are listening out there, please check out this man and all of his work. Support his team. Come out next year to the 2 different paranormal conventions that he's going to be throwing. Support paranormal. Support restoration of fine historic locations, because that's the only way that they're going to stay historic and not fall down as people like Adam. So, why don't you tell us where we can check you guys out at, and anything else that you would like to mention, any thank yous, things like that, and we'll go ahead and wrap up for the evening.
Well, first off, Garrett, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the show. You are another brilliant mind in the community. I love seeing this. There's so many brilliant individuals out there. So thank you again for having me on the show.
Thank you.
For anyone that would like to follow Resident Undead, it's a series I've been working on for over 10 years. You can find it on YouTube, simply typing in Resident Undead. Everything's very clean cut from there. You can binge watch 17 hours straight, if not more, of episodes and extra content of what I've dubbed an adventure of a lifetime. Many investigators, you can agree, this is quite the adventure we're all on. If you'd like to find anything else about Madison Seminary, it's located in Madison, Ohio. You can check out our Facebook page. That's the quickest way to reach us, Madison Seminary online. You'll know which one it is when you click that in on Facebook. And then secondly, Fairfield County Infirmary, also on Facebook. We are open for private teams to investigate. And if you're not necessarily really big into the paranormal or don't have a team, but are just interested perhaps in the history, we do flashlight tours and daytime tours at both properties. So there is something for everybody. And that's pretty much all of it, guys.
Absolutely. Well, make sure, folks, you check him out. You share his content around. You give them a like, a follow, a listen, a view. I have spent a great deal of time watching their content on YouTube, and it's a great series of work. So, I certainly stand behind it. That's the only reason I have any of the guests on this show is because I personally resonate and love what they do and stand behind it. You're not getting people who are just flying by night, snake oil salesmen in this industry. I bring on people who I believe are here out of true passion, and Adam's one of those people. So make sure you check him out. A couple announcements before we wrap up and we close out for the evening. Next Tuesday, the 29th, we are bringing you another episode of Cestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys. Daniel will be joining me for that one. This one is on the phenomenon of, did you dream of this man? And if you're not familiar with that, there is a face of a man who has been seen thousands of times across all parts of the world, different countries, different backgrounds, different age groups, all of the same individual, and no one knows who he is, if he ever existed, what kind of being he is, but it is certainly some type of anomaly. That is the 29th from 8 to 9 p.m. As I said, that'll be Daniel and myself. And then real quick, I did want to say, if you love the show, make sure, as I said earlier, click the like, share, and follow button. Make sure you go back through our archives and listen to all the other great episodes, everything from cryptids to demonology to paranormal to metaphysics and everything in between. And make sure you also check out our brand new show launching October 1st. This is a true passion love child of mine, something I've had in the works for a while. My brand new show, Knights of the Nephilim, drop October 1st. This show, if you're first time hearing about it, is going to be a show on ceremonial high magic, where we bring on some of the most world-renowned authors and occultists across the planet to talk over all forms of high magic, from Hinduism to Hoodoo, from Satanism to Santeria to, everything in between, Enochian to Goetic. So we will be talking over all forms of ceremonial magic and digging into some very brilliant minds on their work, their procedures and practices, theory and theologies. And it's something I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. I've been working on this for some time now, and I think people are going to love it. We already, our first episode drops October 1st, and we are booked into January right now with guests. So I have some of the biggest and baddest names in the occult, and we got a lot more lined up coming here in the near future. So make sure you check that out. That is called Knights of the Nephilim, and that's brought to you by Cestial Oddities as well. And that's October 1st, 8 p.m. We will air to you 2 to 3 times a month on Thursday evenings, whereas our shows here are on Tuesdays. But make sure you check that out. Other than that, I want to thank all of you for listening tonight. Adam, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us your time and, some great content, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me again, Garrett. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. You catch you next time, guys, on Cestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys podcast. Take care and have a good night.